when I woke up, very confused. She said, "You almost died last night. In fact, no one can believe you were alive."
I went into the games not knowing what was coming.
As humans, we just hate uncertainty.
You just sensed that it was out there.
You have to start somewhere.
We're all programmed to push ourselves even farther.
This is On the X, an IRONCLAD original. Welcome to On the X. My guest today is Thomas Erikson, Swedish author, behavioral expert, and one of the most widely read voices on communication, personality, and human behavior. He's best known for his international bestsellers, Surrounded by Idiots, which introduced millions of readers to a powerful framework for understanding personality types through color-based behavioral profiles inspired by disc theory. The book became a global phenomenon, helping people communicate more clearly, lead more effectively, and stop taking misunderstandings so personally. Before becoming a full-time writer and speaker, Thomas spent years coaching leaders and organizations across Europe, focusing on human behavior, motivation, and the psychology behind great leadership. Since Surrounded by Idiots, he's expanded the series with titles like Surrounded by Psychopaths, Surrounded by Setbacks, Surrounded by Bad Bosses, and Surrounded by Narcissists, each one tackling a different challenge in human interaction, from handling manipulation to navigating failure and toxic leadership. Today we talk about what really drives behavior, how to deal with difficult people, and what it takes to better understand yourself and everyone around you. So here we go with Thomas Erikson on the X. Like a castle or something. Like, that is great decor.
This is actually my office.
Nice.
You should see my home. That's better.
Is it even better?
Even better.
Yeah.
We live in the Swedish countryside in an old mansion, I guess, from 1776. So historical surroundings, a lot of work to deal with, a lot of stuff to take care of.
I've been to Sweden, I think 3 times. I think.
Okay.
I went for the first time when I was 15 for a soccer tournament. We like had a soccer team that went over to Sweden and we played in a cup over there. We did Denmark and Sweden, which was amazing as a 15-year-old. And then went back. I'm trying to think. We were stationed in Germany for 3 years. And so there was a time where I think we just went to visit, but then I had a friend who got married in Sweden as well. His wife is Swedish. And so we were on it was outside Gothenburg, and it was like this little island with no cars on it. And it was really, we took a ferry over there. It was really cool. It was great. So,
Sweden is beautiful in the summer. That's for sure.
Yeah. Not so much in the winter. Is it? Do you not like the snow?
I'm from up north, close to the polar circle, so I'm done with snow. Actually, people keep asking me when it's snowing. I'm sort of in the south-ish right now, in the middle of everything. People say when the snow comes, because it's kind of snowy here, "Oh, you're from up north. You gotta love it now, snow and shoveling snow." And I usually say, well, if I had loved snow, I would have stayed up there, but I came down here. So I'm really unhappy now. So now,
yeah, I live in Northwest Montana, so I get a lot of snow here too. It's probably snowy about 5 months out of the year here, which I don't mind. But I can empathize with that sentiment because of my background being a SEAL. You often get people that if you're cold at all or wet and cold and you're complaining, they're like, "Don't you love this? You're a Navy SEAL. You're supposed to love." And I'm like, I don't love it. It's like I can put up with it, but it doesn't mean I like being cold and wet. Like, I don't know many people that like that, right? So, well, thanks for spending the time. Let's kind of get into this. And I know obviously this has been around for a while, and you've probably talked about it at length, but shockingly, I had not heard of this book, or your original book. You obviously have many books, but I had not heard of it. And I've done other personality type tests and things like that. So just what originally got you interested in this topic, kind of human behavior in general? What set you on that path of being interested in this?
It is, of course, the right place to start. Well, I I have a weird story. Usually, people in my position, we have had some teacher, some mentor, some role model that taught us this and that, and sort of clean the way, the path in front of us. I never had one of those. I never had sort of a person to look up to really, you know, learn from and develop from and get wisdom from. I got it from the HR department. Yeah. This is one of the few stories where the HR department is the hero, actually. But it happened actually when I was at 24 years of age. I got my first managing position at this local bank. I'm an ex-banker. I was a great sales rep. So I sold myself to them and said, take me. I can deal with this. I can lead 13 ladies of a variety of ages. And I thought that was a brilliant idea. However, I messed it up badly. I really, really messed it up because selling and leading are related in a tiny little way because of communication skills, but it really has nothing to do with each other, on a daily basis. So I messed it up. And I went to my manager 2 levels up and said, you better take me out of this equation because I actually don't know what I'm doing really. And he said, his response was word by word, you better stay put, Sonny, because your boss is even worse. She's not even here. So I had to sort of fill her shoes as well. And when I finally got rid of sort of got rid of myself, I could rid myself from the situation. The HR department called me up and said, would you fancy a personality test? And I said, sure, I'm a willing learner. Of course, I want to do that. And they handed me a questionnaire, which was the old disc profile, which is what Surrounded by Idiots is about, basically. Mm-hmm. And they gave me the report, and I said, what is this? It's a horrible read. What is this? Is this what people see when I present myself to the room? And they said, yes, it is. Would you like to talk about it? And I said, I better do that because it was absolutely horrible, horrible. I was a very unpleasant person as a young man. And I'm not saying this I mean, it's a lot of the situations were quite shameful for me when I think about it 35 years later on. As you can see, this is some time ago. I still feel bad for the people I tried to lead, actually. But that was a starting point, how I got introduced to the system. So here the HR department actually put me on track. They say, you better look into yourself a little bit and sort of work on you, which I've been doing ever since, actually. Still investigating myself, what I'm doing, what I'm not doing, what I'm supposed to do instead of what I actually do, and all of those things, trying to figure out, still learning new things about me. Some pleasant, some not so pleasant. It's a lifelong quest, it feels like.
Yeah. So that system is the DISC system or DISC. I don't know if I'm using the right term.
It's a DISC. No, that's correct. It's the old DISC profile dressed in colors for a pedagogical reason. It's easy to remember a red and yellow behavior instead of a high D over an I with a low C. Or if you go to MBTI, acid Myers-Briggs, it's going to be an ENTJ personality.
Right.
People don't remember those things. Yeah, right. I have that too in my certificate box, but I don't use it because it's hard to remember, I prefer tools that are, let's say, efficient and easy to use, usable instead of 100% precise.
But can you give, for people that aren't familiar with it at all, can you give a quick overview of that DISC method system, how that works exactly, and then how that translated into your work and the colors specifically? Right.
Well, it's basically a 2x2 matrix. On the left, you have introversion. On the right, you have extroversion. On the top, you have task orientation. At the bottom, you have people orientation. So you get 4 boxes, which are sort of symbolizing main behavioral traits, but they can be combined in numerous ways. You have the extrovert, task-oriented person. That's the red one, the dominant one. Fast forward thinkers, hands-on, quite competitive, boom, let's get going, life is short, that kind of people. A bit harsh. Some people even think they are somewhat aggressive. Because they don't understand them. And then you have the other extrovert profile, which is the yellow one, the influential type, but he's extrovert and or she, of course, extrovert and people-oriented, which gives you a sort of a social person, very, very influential, very inspiring, talkative, happy, smiling, creative individual. And on the introvert side, you have another people-oriented individual, but introvert, which gives us the green, striving for stability, which are people who are very friendly, very calm, caring, sharing, great team players. They take one for the team constantly because the individual is not important, as important as the team, I should say. The team is always what counts. And it could be the family, it could be your soccer team, it could be, your platoon, it could be anything really, it could be the whole society instead of an individual. They don't like conflicts, they don't like changes, so they can be a little bit hard to deal with. And then the final character is the blue one, the analyst, or the conscientious type. Introvert, task-oriented, gives you, let's say, an engineer or an accountant or a tax sheriff, something like that, which are, keen. They have a sort of a keen on details, quality, facts, evidence. How do you know this? Have you read it in a book? Did you read it in the original language? No, I don't read German. Well, you should, because there's been some horrible translation errors, these kind of types. Right. So you get these four basics, but again, you can combine them, you can mix them in many, many ways. But it's like when you bake a cake, you need to understand what is an egg. What does sugar do to the mixture? How much milk? What is milk really? What kind of milk? When you understand the basics, you can work with them. And most people are a combination of two of these colors. Could be any combination. 5% of the population shows mainly one color, but those people are really easy to only one. Those people are easy to recognize, especially if it's the red or yellow one. You won't miss those ones.
Now, where did it come from? Like, did somebody hypothesize this originally to say, okay, I've sort of see these behaviors in people and I'm somehow going to set out to prove it? Or was there a big test done with like thousands of folks that figured this out and where it's sort of like, okay, it's these four boxes? Because to your point, there's other personality types out there too. Like I'm very familiar, I think a lot of us from the military, Myers-Briggs used to be a big thing where we would all take that and you're the INTF or INTJ or whatever it is, those things. There's Berkman out there, which I've done as well. In fact, I pulled up my Berkman before this conversation to kind of look at that too as a reference, because I hadn't looked at it in probably 10 years. So there's other ways to do it. And so I'm just kind of curious how it came about, right? Like how that it was like, okay, yep, these are the boxes and here's why, and here's the data that kind of shows that.
Most of these tools or models or whatever you would like to call them they have their basis quite long back in time. This is based on William Moulton Marston's work from 1928. He wrote a book called Emotions of Normal People, which is an interesting title. Normal people.
As opposed to,
whatever that is these days, instead of not normal people. True.
Right.
No, but he did, and he based his research on Carl Jung, and most of these things you can trace them back to Jung in one way or another. But he had more of a scientific view on modern psychology than, let's say, Freud or Adler. But you can, and then the vector analysis was created in the, I think, mid 50s something, and the disc profile, they actually came about at the marketplace, really, because disc is not a brand like Myers-Briggs. That's a brand. So you have one Myers-Briggs, but disc is a theory. It's a model that you can tweak and sort of twist and turn a little bit around. So there's probably 10 or 25 different disc assessments, I would say, different tools, but they have the same basis. But disc is only the four. It's the acronym for dominance, influence, stability, and conscientiousness. And some people say compliance because, why agree on what the C is really. So there you go.
Right.
But interestingly enough, what was fascinating, Chris, about this is that you can trace these four basic characteristics all the way back to Hippocrates 2,500 years ago.
Right.
He spoke about the four temperaments, but you can see the same patterns, the same, let's say, variety of behaviors, which I think is pretty cool. because
it is pretty cool.
It actually makes sense because the human mind hasn't changed really much. In the brain is the same since 70,000 years ago. The neuroscientists claim. If that's true, that's sort of. But society changes, but we actually don't change really.
Right.
That's interesting.
Yeah. You talk about that, the Hippocrates and also other cultures. I think you have the Aztecs in there, I believe, right? Where it's like the sort of 4 elements, same thing, kind of earth, fire, water, air correspond as well. That same kind of concept across, to your point, kind of millennia of human evolution, where it's like, yeah, it really doesn't change that much. So this was out there, but you obviously turned it into something that is, to your point, simpler to understand. We've got 4 colors. It's just easier for people to digest. But I think it took you a really long time to do this, right? You were working on this for something like 20 years before you originally got this first book out. Is that right?
Well, the first book, true. I dreamt of being an author from early years.
Oh.
Why? Well, long story. Why not? If you're going to do something completely impossible, why not try to do that? And the competition in Sweden, being an author is really, really hard because everybody dreams about being an author. So it's a huge competition there. But now I wanted to be an author. So I was writing for 20 years without getting published. So I am obviously not a natural talent. Okay. Fair enough. But I finally took some advice. I got some feedback from a professional, and she said, you can't do it like this. You have to do it like that. And then I got published within a year. So I published 4 thrillers that no one read, basically. Didn't sell at all, couldn't live on it. But I was working as this management consultant using the disc profile, the 4-color system, one of many systems that I was using and training people in, coaching people in to be experts in. So then I finally cracked the idea, why not combine the writing with my professional job? So why not write a book about the 4 colors? I went to my then publisher and said, I have this brilliant idea. It's going to be super great. And they said, well, what is it? And I said, it's going to be a book about communication, behaviors, how to lead by using its 4-color system. The book is going to be called Surrounded by Idiots. And it's going to look like this. It was my own, in my own design, the cover design. And they looked at me with horror in their eyes and said, that's the stupidest thing you ever came up with. Firstly, it's a silly title. It's an ugly cover. Don't do it. Scrap the whole idea. Don't do it. So that was not a very beautiful start. So I had to shop around in whole Scandinavia for a publisher. And they all basically said the same thing. I was the idiot. So I had to self-publish the bloody book,
I think they proved the point of the title, though, right? Like they're proving the exact concept behind the book.
Thank you, sir. I think you're absolutely spot on there. No, but sometimes you just can't figure it out. So, but I'm a bit persistent. Or stubborn is another word. So I did it, and I was driving around with boxes of books in the back of my car, just forcing them onto my clients. Take 5 books, take 2, take a book. So do we have to pay for the book about idiots? What is this? That's how it started, actually. So that was a struggle. Took me years in order to get it into the airports and train stations and the bookstores. But after that, it just boomed. So that was nice.
Was that your first working title, Surrounded by Idiots?
Oh, yes.
That is so. First of all,
it is stupid. It's a stupid title.
No, I know. They are completely wrong. It's a brilliant title because it is. I think it strikes a chord with just about everybody out there. Like at some point in our lives, we feel this way. And it's really like you look at it and you go, yeah, that's how I feel. My wife saw this book lying on our coffee table and I read a lot of books for this podcast. And she walked by and she went, Surrounded by Idiots. That should be a perfect book for you. Just kind of making fun of me of like, yeah, you say that kind of sentiment a lot. Like, yeah, people are so stupid, right? So, no, it's brilliant.
We all been in those meetings. You sit around the table, trying to take notes, following some sort of agenda, and you realize after 5 minutes, no one else is following the agenda. No one is paying attention to what you are saying. Maybe you're not paying attention to them either. And when you just have this thing going on, what is going on in this room? What is happening? And when you leave the room, you have this notion, what is wrong with these people? And sometimes you're surrounded by idiots. The interesting part that I have discovered is some people are indeed surrounded by more idiots than others. That's interesting. Some people seem to be some idiot magnets, that draws weirdos and lunatics to themselves. That's really interesting. There's a pattern in some people.
So what, from your perspective though, why do you think the book resonated? So obviously a huge success, and then you've gone on to write other books in this surrounded by kind of title format, but why did it resonate so strongly with people?
Why? That's the right question, of course. I think it's about, I got this question quite often, and I think it's about, well, firstly, the title helps because people gets a bit curious and intrigued and maybe provoked, and they at least pick it up and say, well, what is this? So that helps. But I would think it's about recognition. As you just pointed out, we all had that feeling once in a while that nobody's understanding anything the way that I do. I feel like I'm the only one who gets it. And this is sort of a common situation. It's so clear for me, and it's so clear for you, and still you are saying something totally opposite from what I'm standing. So what is going on? And we have those moments, every one of us. And the book is about understanding other people, but it's basically about understanding yourself. And for me, self-awareness is the key to being an excellent communicator. If you don't know where you're coming from, how will you ever deal with anybody if you don't know what they see when you introduce yourself to them? And the book aims to, I'm trying to sort of hot wire the reader a little bit, trying to make them read about other people while instead actually learning about themselves. Because I am the starting point. If I'm taking a flight to, I don't know, what's your closest airport?
For me, Kalispell.
Going there. Yep. Kalispell. Let's say I'm going to Kalispell. So let's say I call my travel agency up. Not that we do that anymore, but for the sake of argument, right. I call them up and I say, hey, get me a ticket to Kalispell. They will Google it probably. I don't know. I've never heard of it. My apologies. And they will say, no problem, we'll get you a ticket. And then they will ask me, from where would you like to go? Just imagine I said, well, never mind that. Just get me the ticket. That's going to be a tricky problem to get around. You need 2 dots on the map that you have to connect, and verbal and non-verbal communication is the same way. You need to understand where you're going, but you need to understand where you're coming from. If I'm going to Kalispell from Sydney, it's going to be a different ride than if I come from, I don't know, London perhaps. It's a different flight. That's just the way it is, and people tend to forget about this. That's why I say mirror yourself as much as you can bear. View yourself in the mirror and try to figure out where are you in this particular matrix. And then you can add other knowledge on other insights on top of that. But self-awareness is such a good thing to have, really.
On the X is brought to you by Mechanix Wear. Mechanix Wear gloves are kind of the go-to glove, I think, for most people out there, whether it's working around the house or on the job or some kind of tactical setting. That's certainly been the case for me throughout my life. And they've made a whole bunch of improvements to the gloves that they have out there. So they've got the kind of original series here with the Velcro backing, Velcro close that most people can use in sort of everyday settings, very ubiquitous for various things that you might want to do. Then they've got these fast fit ones, which you essentially just slide on. There's a little loop there around the wrist where you can pull them on. And then they've got the Impact series, which has a reinforced backing to protect your knuckles. And then they've got this lock ring reinforcement around the thumb now, where there's a lot of wear and tear. There's a whole bunch of other improvements to these. And if you go to their website, they literally have a 5 to 7 minute video about each one of these sets of gloves and all the improvements they've made, from the material, reducing the seams, making them more reinforced, making them more moisture wicking. It's clear that they put a lot of care and attention into their gloves. And if you listen to the guy talk on the website, they really love gloves. And I think that comes out in everything they do. When I'm going out to a hardware store and I'm looking for some gloves, I almost look at everything else as just kind of a cheap knockoff. So definitely my go-to glove, highly recommended. Mechanix Wear gloves. They're available at most retailers on mechanicswear.com and GSA Advantage, and they're proud to offer an exclusive 15% off discount through the ID.me program to military veterans and first responders. So check them out. Is there a if this was in the book, I don't remember it. Is there a test to take to figure out, oh, I'm this much red and this much yellow or whatever it is? Or is it just reading through the various behaviors and sort of self-identifying and go, yep, that's kind of my tendency?
The test, the real deal is not in the book. And the reason for that is quite simple. It costs money because the algorithm is super complicated. There are free disc tests online, but there's a reason why they're free. They're actually going to trick you into believing something that is not true. And a lot of these things are just, they don't work at all. So I wouldn't recommend them, although it can teach you something, but it's not going to be very adequate. So I'm not a big advocate for the free stuff. They cost a little bit of money. You can find them on my website. You can find them there's a number of affiliates working with these tools, so you will easily find it if you Google it. But no, it's not in the book. But again, when you read the book, you will see the major patterns.
Right.
You understand,
Yeah,
I'm mostly an extrovert, or maybe I may be an introvert, or maybe I'm a task-oriented person, but torn between extroversion and introversion. I mean, these things exist on a continuum. You will understand the basics, absolutely so.
Okay. To that point, though, about self-awareness, is it possible that we would get that? Like, sometimes we're blind to our own proclivities, the way we act. We think we're one way, and other people will go, no, you're not. That's not how you act. So can we get it wrong? Is it better to have a friend or multiple friends read the book as well and then tell you what you are? Is that a better approach?
Better than what? Taking the real...
Better than doing it yourself. Yeah.
Doing it yourself. Well, you will give yourself, when you read the book, you will give yourself a number of colors because you can't help yourself.
Sure.
It's actually fascinating. That's what happened to me, and I still do it. And I think, oh, that's a red behavior. Now I went a little bit green there. All right, and so I still do that because why not? One way, if you will observe yourself, but as you just pointed out, you will never see the full picture. Of course you won't, because self-awareness is to understand who you are, but it's also about understanding what everybody else sees, as I just touched upon before. And if you have a good friend that will speak the truth, it's got to be a really good friend, because people are polite and they will say, no, you're not. You're not impolite. You never interrupt. No, you don't forget the small stuff. No,
you just got to go find a red. You just find a red friend, right? You just find a red friend to give you the feedback.
Find a red friend he doesn't have time to fool around. He will just say, no, you're not like this. Is who you are, and shut up and move on. Life is short. Let's get going. And that's what's going to happen. So that's actually the best way to go. If you don't take the real assessment, you can ask a couple of people. But some will say you talk too much. Some will say you talk too little. Then you have to sort of find some medium way to look at it, some average sort of, diagnosis, I guess. And they don't know either, because if you ask an extrovert, do I talk too much? Just an example. He will say, no, I don't think so. An introvert will say, oh, yes, you do. But how much is too much? I don't know. You don't know. Nobody knows. What's the correct number of words per minute from anyone? I don't know. Who could really say how much you should speak, or how much you should listen, or how you set your goals, or how are you a persistent type? Are you conscientious, or are you just sloppy? What's the matter with you? Who could really say? That's why you need a neutral tool. That's why the disc analysis still exists around, I think, because you get a kind of neutral description of you, and you will buy the content up till 85, maybe 90% if you're lucky. Not 100%, never happen. But you will buy into most of it, and you will learn from it. That is absolutely the case.
By the way, did you pick the colors to sort of coincide with how we kind of view those colors to begin with, right? Because red, I think of kind of war and passion and things like that, right? Love or Mars. Is that meant to align with that kind of personality?
No, I didn't pick the colors. I can't take credit for that. The colors
Okay, I thought you did.
No. So that would be a dirty lie. I can't take credit for it. I've used it extensively, I'm sure, and I've spread it around, but I didn't come up with them in the first place. No, red is a symbol for fire. Yellow is a symbol for air, or actually oxygen to be, and green is obviously earth, and it's the four elements, and blue is the sea. So that some people call the leisure psychological colors. That has to be debunked a little bit. We can go way deep into the rabbit hole of what is what here, but let's not. But it helps. Again, it helps quite a lot, I would say. The colors are very useful, super useful. People remember them. People remember them.
Sure. Yeah, it's pretty easy to remember.
What's your color? I'm blue and green, you know. Okay, there you go.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm me personally, I'm sort of blue red. I think I'm somewhere in the mix of those two, depending on the scenario.
I think so too. I think you're right.
Just can you sum up people like that, or do you have a very good sense now? You must, after doing this for so long, where you get a read on people.
It's my job to know these things.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, I read you. I can see you. I don't know if everybody can see this, or people are listening in further on. I don't know, but I can see. I see your facial expressions. I see your body language. You're very controlled. You're sitting still because you're a true professional. I know a little bit about your background. You would probably not have been able to go through what you went through without having some mental capacity to focus on the assignment itself, which is task orientation.
Right.
And these are just presumptions. I can't say if it's correct, but and when you look at me like this, you know, you have this line between your eyes. You are super focused. You're very, very concentrated.
Yeah, I know. I wish I could get rid of that. It just keeps getting worse.
Yeah, because you do this a lot, and I think you have a temperament, and I would say that you know how to control it. Well, I'm sure you can.
For the most part, not always, but I do my best.
Always.
Hopefully, I'm a little bit better at it the older I get. So, so if people wanted to, like you talked a little bit about the different behavior types and whatnot, but if people wanted like a quick reference in a person, either real or imagined, are there, and you have some of these in the book, but just curious on your current view of this, like this real famous person who's real, a celebrity, or this character from fiction is like dead on a red person or dead on a blue person?
I usually, to make it a bit entertaining, I use Star Wars as an example. I'm talking about the original movies. If you think about Darth Vader, he's red because he's determined. Now, he's evil, of course, but you have to look beyond that. He's very determined. He's very firm. He has a powerful body language. He moves slowly. He enters the room. He dominates the room. You know, he never backs away, and he's competitive, and he's a fighter. That's actually a part of red behavior. The yellow character would be Han Solo, especially in the first two movies. Cracking jokes, you know, making fun of things, you know, not taking things seriously, a bit of an adventurer, sort of a guy who, you know, let's see what happens. Let's let's just, you know, fly into the Death Star and see if we can manage to get out of it. Let's just shoot some rockets, you know, wow, things are happening. And he talks his way out of everything because he's very, very, very talkative. Green would be Luke Skywalker. He's the hero, but he's calm, he's friendly, he's nice. He's like what's his name, Frodo, you know. Team player, friendly, kind, helpful, a little bit naive, you know, but you know, the good guy, the kind guy, the generous guy. And the blue character in Star Wars in the early movies would be R2-D2. No, sorry, 3PO. The guy in the robot costume there, you know, you can't do this, you can't do that, that's forbidden, you don't do this, you don't cross the line, this is not allowed, you know, talking about the rules and regulations constantly. And I'm pretty sure George Lucas wrote those characters based on the same system, not necessarily the profile, but but if you look at every major movie, you have these characters. Look at the four hobbits in The Lord of the Rings. the same thing. One is talking all the time, and one is a bit anxious, and one is an adventurer, and Frodo, he's sort of the kind, helpful, he's taking one for the team, so to speak. You see the same pattern. Disney, the same thing. Well, not modern Disney, but let's say back in the days, Disney. Same thing. Donald Duck. It's the same pattern all over because people recognize it. They recognize these characters. They understand. They say, "Oh, you're a little bit like Max Scrooge there. You're a little bit like Donald himself. And back and forth." And it works. It works. It works, and that's why it's so useful. And that's why they do it. Actually.
Yeah. That's
You haven't thought of that now, have you?
The Star Wars thing, because you mentioned Han Solo, I think, in the book as a yellow.
Yeah, I think I do. That's right.
You do for sure. But the Hobbit one is great because they're all this. I mean, in Star Wars, yes, very distinct, different characters. But the four hobbits in Lord of the Rings, other than that, they're basically the same, right? Same height, same species, certainly.
Yeah.
But I hadn't thought of it. That's exactly right. Between those three, like Sam's the green one and Pippin's the yellow one and Frodo's, I guess, the red one and Merry's probably the blue one, I think, if I were to break it down. Maybe I have two of those wrong. But Sam's definitely the green guy for sure, 100% in that scenario.
It works so well. And you can read classic novels, from the really big names. You see the same pattern. When I wrote thrillers, I still write thrillers just as a hobby, really. I use the same things. I take one crystal clear red, yellow, green, and blue. And people say, I like this guy, I didn't like that guy. Because, and they identify themselves with them. That's why it works. I identify with the green behavior or yellow behavior or whatever it is. And it's so interesting to see these conflict between a red and green person because they are absolute opposites,
Right.
You got to have interesting drama between them, which is also fascinating to watch, of course. So, but it goes through, and when you build a team together, you can use the same model again.
Right.
You can put four people from different boxes, from different parts of this matrix, and you can have a diverse team when it comes to personalities. And they will look at problem solving from four completely different angles at the same time. And it's beautiful to see they cover everything. But if you have one color or only two colors in the team, you're going to miss half of the deal. That's just the way it is.
Right. So let's talk about that, because obviously the whole point of this, to your point about effective communication, is to bring this into our personal lives and professional lives, right? So it's about our personal relationships, whether that's with friends, family, spouses, kids, but then our coworkers as well and other people we work. So what's the best way? How do we start to incorporate that? Like, what's the first step that people should take? Should they sit down and sort of examine those around them to think, okay, he's a red, she's a green, whatever? Is that the right approach to start with? Obviously, I think it's self-assessment, but then beyond that, how do we kind of start to incorporate some of this stuff into our lives in those ways?
Well, there's more than one way. I would say. I would suggest that let's say if I am the team leader in this mix, let's say I have 10 people to lead, and I'm sort of I got into this and I'm fascinated. I want to learn. I want to use it in my team because I can see the benefits. All right. I would start with checking myself. I would take the assessment myself. I would get the report. I would take some feedback from a professional who can straighten out the question marks and take out the crap from the report. But because, as I said, 10% you're going to scrap anyway. That's just the way it is. Pretty normal. Excuse me. And then you sell the idea to the team and you convince them to say, the more we understand each other, the better we're going to cooperate and the easier it's going to get to achieve our goals, whatever they are, short-term, long-term, all of them. And they would say, that sounds interesting and intriguing, let's do it. So then you do the assessment with all of them. And then you have a neutral individual who give them feedback. So you don't feedback on your team members because they would like to ask questions when it comes to their own profiles, their own personality assessments. Because you are a bit biased because you know them. too well, maybe very well. I don't know. And no, sorry, I was the team leader. I know them too well. This is complicated. I know them too well. So I can't be completely neutral. It's better to use some external resource just for that piece. And then you have sit around the table and you put everyone in so-called profile wheel, where you have red, yellow, green, and blue. You have it all in one. You plot everyone into it, so you can see where you are located in this matrix in relation to each other. And that's what makes it interesting to see, wow, John and George and Sarah and Emma, they're all yellow. No wonder you always go to lunch together and you're chatting and laughing and have a great time. And Harry and Henry and Harry and Henry, Fred and Gerta, they are the introverts. They are also sitting by themselves in around the lunch table. But you're also very quiet. That makes sense. You never speak, but you seem to enjoy each other's company. I am up here. I'm blue and red maybe, and no one is here because I'm the leader. And so you can see where you are plotted in this. And it's really interesting because you can understand why does Sam and Harriet has so many troubles to reaching each other verbally and using emails or whatever, because it's like one speaks Greek and the other speaks Portuguese, different languages. Doesn't really matter how willing you are to contribute and do your best if you speak different languages. It's just going to sound like silliness, That's when you are surrounded by idiots, because why isn't he listening? I told him specifically, and he would say, no, you didn't. This is very unclear, all of it. What do you mean by this and that? A, B, what A, and what is B, and what is C? I don't know. You didn't say. Well, I sent you a report last week. Well, I don't read reports, Well, you should read it, and then off you go. So this will help you to understand why there might be some clashes a little bit here and there. And the trick is to identify the communication problems, because when the chain breaks, which sure it's gonna break, it could be 10% bad procedures, bad routines, and so on, some error in the process, but it's 90% lousy communication. And that's easy to prove because people just don't pay attention. Right.
What about specific jobs for specific colors? So some of them, I mean, look, I think the one that stands out the most to me is like accountants being blue, basically. And when I read this, and I'm thinking of our CFO,
hell, by the way.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm thinking of our CFO, and I'm like, and I don't know if he's listening to this, but like I was close to 100% blue. I would say pretty close, and that makes sense. Like, yep, that's good. But is that true across the board? And are there other things like that where it's like salespeople are really good yellows or whatever it may be? Is that should people proactively try to do that kind of thing where it's like, I have this particular job title and therefore this behavior type is the best hire for it?
Now you're touching on something really interesting, and this is in some areas, some let's say some social structures, a very unpopular view that I will now reveal to you, and that is you will not fit into any situation. Your mother was wrong. You cannot be anything you want. You can be much more than you think by working on yourself, and all of that, for sure. But you can't do anything because you're not suited for every position everywhere. When I was funny story about my own background. When I was young, I wanted to be a professional basketball player. You can't see this because I'm sitting down, but I'm like, what's that? That's 6'2". 6'2",
okay.
6'1", 6'2", 185 centimeters tall. Too short. The other one were like 2 meters and 10 centimeters, which is, I don't know,
you could be a basketball player at 6'2". There's really good basketball players in the NBA. And
then let's say I wasn't good enough. Yeah, you're probably right. But anyways, then I wanted to drive Formula One cars. Turns out I didn't fit into the cabin, too tall all of a sudden. So life has treated me very unfairly. I had to find myself an occupation where my height didn't matter. So I started writing books, No one cared. Is he tall? Is he short? Who knows? Doesn't really matter. Can he write, So no, you can't be anything. And thing is, you mentioned blue people. They will excel in Excel, by the way. They love Excel sheets, and spreadsheets, and they have full track of details and numbers and the data, and they know everything about every tiny little thing that you and I couldn't be bothered by. But they have keep track of them, which is brilliant when it comes to accounting, as an example, or keeping track of our taxes or whatever. Salespeople usually could benefit from yellow behavior because they're very talkative, they smile a lot, they're open-minded, they're friendly, they're positive, they love people, they're not afraid of knocking on doors, cold calls, not a problem for yellow people, because this may be a new friend on the other side of the line. Let's call him and see what happened, Very positive, very convincing. They had the way with words. So yellow helps when it comes to sales. Green people usually would fit, they would suit very well into, I would say, healthcare industry. I would assume a lot of nurses have the green, helpful, and it's a natural tendency. And I'm not saying blues, yellows, reds cannot be nurses. I didn't say that. But for a green person, it comes so natural to, reach out a helping hand. What can I do for you? Or teachers working in schools, helping young kids to thrive, to teach them, to educate them, because it's a struggle these days. It's really, really hard work, but they do it because for the better good, so they do it. And there's also a statistical fact that the higher up in any hierarchy that you reach, you will find more and more and more red behavior, because not because they are better leaders necessarily. They are clear leaders. You will understand them, but they have sharper elbows, and they understand the phrase, it's lonely at the top, and they accept it. It's a fact. Yeah. I'm not here to make buddies anyway. I'm here to get the job done, If you don't love me, I can live with that. Yeah. Whatever. And they are competitive.
What about marketing? What kind of colors?
Marketing. Well, a lot of marketeers that I talk to, they are mostly extrovert, but that's only based on my own observations, because it's the same thing with PR. It's about reaching the market, reaching the customers. It's about communication, open. Let's say, open. Of course, marketing is a one-way communication in a way. But they are interested in human beings, they're interested in people, and they are quite driven and goal-oriented. So it helps a lot. But I have met a blue marketer as well. He based everything, every campaign on extensive data. So that can work as well. But he might be not as creative as a yellow person, because they have it, again, it comes more natural for them. I'm talking about competency, because you can learn, you can train yourself in certain fields. Of course, you can do that. But what comes natural, like it's more natural to play basketball if you're 2 meters tall instead of 1.75.
That's certainly easier.
It's more natural to reach the basket.
Yeah. So to that point about it being natural. Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's probably right. I think the marketing thing is interesting because that's what I'm drawn to the most. That's where I found myself landing after the military, sort of like your experience. I started off in sales, knowing nothing about it, coming from a military background. And I think there was a perception where I first worked as a civilian, that because there were other former SEALs specifically in the sales department, that it's like, hey, all these guys are going to be great at sales. And I sucked at it and I hated it. And I'm like, I don't like cold calling people. I don't like asking people for money. It's just not in my nature, to use your words. I'm much more of a creative. I like playing music, and I like art, and I like the creative aspect of that. Like, how do I solve this problem and come up with something that's really interesting? But that's also kind of doesn't fit into my blue nature, which is very strong for me. Like, I'm super fastidious, and I'm everything. I mean, some of the stuff you talk about in this book, I'm like, oh my God, that's so me, where everything in the house has to have its spot and very organized and always cleaning and nothing extraneous. Right. And so, I think
May I ask you a question?
Sure. Yeah.
Do you think that comes from your natural tendencies, or is it something that you learn within the military?
That's a great.
You have to keep order of things.
Well, so this was
because it could be a matter of life and death if you don't find things.
this is the question I was going to ask you is, you talked about things that come naturally. And the question I was going to ask is, how much of these personality traits, these behaviors are natural, meaning almost genetic, like we're born with it? And how much is it something we learn? It's a nature versus nurture type argument, right? Like how much is something that because of our upbringing, we act that way?
50-50.
Is it? Okay.
Simple. let's say 50-50. It's not exactly, it's 47, 48, and then you have some 5% X factor that really can't be explained. And psychologists struggle a little bit. It goes back and forth, which is the heavier part. Is it nature? Is it nurture? Doesn't really matter. Let's say for the sake of argument, it's 50-50. You get a lot of it from your DNA. That is for sure.
Okay.
The only way to test how much is to separate identical twins at birth, which is a very cruel way to do science. It has been done a little bit, not lately, because it's cruel. Of course.
Yes.
Send one to the other side of the planet and 20 years after to see who did into what and so on.
Yeah.
So then they can measure it, but that's not I don't advocate doing that at all. So,
no, I don't think any of us would. Yeah, right.
Just to point that out, but it could be done. But and then it's about how you get raised. I mean, kids are affected by their parents mainly up till the age of about 4. And after that, their little buddies at kindergarten affects them more and influence them more, and the teachers, and the play people, and when you get into first grade, and the tiny students and your new teachers, and the whole environment, the context in school, and then you go to gymnasium and college and high school and college and all of that. You're going to be affected and formed into the person that you are up until your frontal lobe closes. You maybe heard of that before.
Yep, for sure.
In girls 18, 19 years of age, in boys 23, 24.
Never.
Why is that? Well, don't know. Some people never grow up. No, it's a neuroscientist claims it's a physical thing. Yeah, never.
Right. Yeah.
That's a bit of a discussion there. But then you can, because why is this important? It's because now you can understand the consequences of your decisions. Before it's really expensive to insure your motorcycle if you're a young man. After 25, it usually is 25, then the fee goes down because now you're a smarter person. And that's why most criminals, they do their criminal debut when they're really young. If you can lock them in until they're 30 years of age, you're going to get rid of 90% of all criminals on the planet, because now you're a little bit smarter, but then they might be stuck in a system. You get the point.
Yep.
But after that, you don't change very much, but you get something with you. You have parts of your parents' DNA in you, obviously. And some people are trying to be not at all as my father. I don't want to be like him. That's a common thing. But when you reach his age, 30 years later, you're going to realize you have quite a few of his traits.
Yes, that's true.
Bad, that's a little bit who you are. You're not him perfectly, but you are a lot of him.
Oh, for sure.
And also from your mother, of course. So that is the way it is. You can work on yourself. You can add competences. You can learn new skills. You can work on your habits. You can be more. You can sort of train yourself to be more persistent. You can sort of challenge yourself, but your personality doesn't really change unless, so that's important, you suffer from some sort of psychological trauma of some kind. That could change you in your inner core. If you near-death experience, or you lose a child, something that really, really shakes you in your inner core, that really changes you for the rest of your life. I had a CEO, an entrepreneur, let's call him instead, entrepreneur. He was running a couple of businesses. He had 3 toddlers at home. He was building a new house. He was super red, super dominant, not very charming at all, frankly. But he woke up one morning blind. He was working like 18 hours per day.
Oh, wow.
He woke up, couldn't see. So he sort of fumbled his way to his phone and tried to call his closest man at job. Say, I'm coming in later. I don't know. I can't see anything. And you try to use your smartphone when you can't see, because you can't feel, the numbers. It's almost impossible. But it did. And every organ closed down until the lungs started to fail. So they put him in ER. And he was some crash and burnout kind of thing. And 18 months recovery, came out totally green.
Oh, wow. Completely changed him.
Completely, 100% the other direction. And he said, I learned my lesson. Now it's all about family. I'm going to slow the pace down completely. It is what it is. I'm going to sell everything off. I'm going to take a job and see where life takes me. That is the most extreme change I have seen. But he almost killed himself. That's an extreme workaholic. He almost took his own life by not sleeping, not eating, everything, just grinding. He had grit for sure, but he almost died, and he changed completely. That's probably the most extreme case I have seen, at least. I was his mentor by the time. So,
could somebody do that by choice, though? Could they say, okay, I now understand all this. I see these traits in myself. I actually want to be completely different. I want to be more yellow or whatever. Could someone do that theoretically?
Well, in theory, there's no difference between theory and practice. But in practice, there is. I would say my first question would actually be, why would you?
I don't know.
What's wrong with you today?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know.
A lot of people say, I want to be more red. Red is mostly the color people dream of without being red, because it sounds a bit cool, a bit tough. I'm sort of a competitive guy. I'm a fighter. I'm a warrior kind of type. And I say, yeah, but they're also quite aggressive and bad listeners, and people don't like them very much because they are too blunt. And that's not good. No, I didn't think of that. No, that's not so good. So why would you like to change who you really are? I usually recommend people not to violate their own. I will answer your question, but I usually recommend people not to violate their personality, because that's going to give you stress-related diseases, physical ones. Trying to be someone you're not. I mean, sometimes we enter some sort of. It could be, it could be a garden party. It could be an afterwork. It could be anything. You're surrounded by people you just don't enjoy the company of very much. You have to play along, you have to put on the mask and try to be someone that you certainly is not. And it's not going to help you at all. Imagine do that for 7 days per week.
Yeah.
Why would you?
Well, here's the example I'm thinking of just personally. And when I look at these profiles, if I were to adopt some more of a color, I think it would be yellow. I think it is. When I examine myself, I lack some, not ability, but willingness to sort of be a little more go-lucky and happy and loose and easygoing and social at times. And I have a very good friend who is a total yellow type person. He's got some other colors in there, and I really admire him for his ability to do that, where everything's just fun. And it's like, there's not a lot of anxiety. And so I look at that and I'm a little bit, envious of that, where it's like, I wish I could adopt a little bit more of that. And if there were a way to do that, it'd be good.
You would like to adapt a little bit of it, but would you like to adapt the part where you will never find your car keys?
No.
You will forget people's names. You will you will forget to set the alarm on you, and you were going to miss your flight. Would you like to have that as well?
No.
No. So there's always a trade-off. If you go into one coin, you will get the ups and downs, the pros and cons. It's just the way it is. But sure. People say, I would like to be a better listener. I'm a poor listener. I am too yellow. I'm a good talker. I'm a lousy listener. And I say, okay, well, practice active listening. You can do the following A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and there's a lot of things on the list. You can practice that, but you shouldn't try not to be yellow because you're going to feel bad. It's like saying you have to write with your left hand now if you're right-handed, because it's a good idea. You're going to feel better using your left hand. You can do it for a while. You can practice, but it's going to feel more natural to go back to using your right hand. I can understand why people would like to build better habits. They read Atomic Habits by James Clear. Brilliant guy, brilliant book. If you haven't read it, read it again.
No,
brilliant.
Great book.
But it requires some blue actions, tiny step, one step at a time, building micro habits and all of that, which is absolutely great. But for a yellow person, you will not follow his brilliant advice. You just won't, because it's not you. Should you shoehorn yourself into a box where you don't fit because it sounds like a great idea? if you try to be someone you're not you anymore. And I would say, you're okay. Anyone who's listening, you're fine. You're okay. No, you're not perfect. You can fine tune and polish yourself and all of that. I still do. I still do. I work on my active listening because I have no green in me. That's my main struggle. I am not a natural listener. I have to turn the switch on. I can do that, but not for a whole day. That's gonna, I'm gonna lose something.
Yeah.
Probably. But I think it's more about finding the right context. That could be about work, it could be in a relationship, a romantic one, or a friendship. Finding the right people to be around so you can actually be you and thrive, and people will like you and love you and adore you and compliment you for exact who you really are from the beginning, because those people exist.
Yep.
I'm no hallelujah guy. You can do anything. That's not the point. But I don't believe in squeezing yourself too much and plaguing yourself too much with, I'm lousy at this, I should be better at that. Well, you can work on you, and you can. Again, I know I read a little bit about your background. You've done a tremendous amount of work on you. So you're a great example of that. But you are still the same personality, right?
Yeah.
Discipline. Fine,
Yep.
but you can only discipline yourself that much, and then you're going to feel bad about it. It's got to be a limit somewhere to how far you should push yourself. That's
Of
my
course.
only personal belief. I don't have any study to say. Some people say you just push it, never give up, just grind. Yeah, sure, but there's got to be a line not to cross.
I agree. I totally agree with that. Yeah. Yeah. What about like romantic relationships? Because I think about my friends, all my friends, right? I mean, whether they're my very close friends or sort of whatever that those concentric circles look like, and they're all over the map. I mean, I can think of friends of mine that are very blue, very red, very yellow, I think the people I think that are the closest, well, this isn't 100% true, but people that I think are some of the closest that I can count on the most are green-like people, I think. My best friend from college, I would definitely classify as a green. I think my wife, I would classify as a green. Is that something we should take into account? And is it? Why specifically? I'm curious.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're drawn to green people. You have probably pondered why that is? Is it their inner? Is it the calm? Is there a helpful attitude? Is it the striving for stability, and that's good for you?
I think
if you don't mind, I'm asking.
No. I think it is. Yeah, I mean, I'd never thought about it before reading your book, but I think it is that. I think there's a willingness to listen. There's a calmness there. There's a sort of stability that's there. And it's funny. My best friend from college, his name is Sam. And he's just one of those, he's such a giving person. He's so like, just whatever you need. It's almost like there's never anything in it for him. And it's funny, like I find that all the characters in movies and stories where that character is their name's Sam too. Like Samwise Gamgee from Lord of the Rings is the exact same character. Like he is that guy, right?
That guy. Right.
So it is that. I think it is a little bit of like, I'm, to your point, a lot of times full throttle, pushing hard, and you need, and it helps to have somebody that just sort of helps you pump the brakes and helps kind of take some de-stress. And that's my read on it. Yeah.
When it comes to, that's a great point. When it comes to romantic relationships, Christina, my wife, she's super red. Only red, nothing but red. Well, she's 98% red. A little bit furious. Didn't I get 100? That's the stupidest. I want to do it again. I said, it's not a competition, everything is a competition. She's a lethal salesperson. She's deadly, If she gets you on the phone, you're going to buy something. She's absolutely, she has no boundaries. She will just push and push and push. She's a force of nature. And I have a lot of red in me as well. But the thing is, she's my third wife. So who am I to give advice for relationships? Well, I've tested everything. I know what doesn't work. So I know what has to be done these days. I would say when it comes to opposites attract. Okay, there's a truth in that. But then you have to live together. Now you have to make decisions together, buy a house or a car or plan vacation or raise a child with someone who is your complete opposite. That's a struggle. That's a constant fight, If you're too different, if you're like this, or maybe I should do it like this, nothing matches each other. You're an extrovert, she's an introvert. You're task-oriented, she's people-oriented. You like to go out, she likes to stay in. You love soccer, she likes, I don't know, mini golf or something. You have nothing in common, really. You can have interest, but you think in different ways and you solve problems in different ways and you see the world in a whole different light. It's gonna be a struggle. Then again, if you're identical, if you're exactly the same, nothing's gonna happen for that reason, because instead of conflicts, you're gonna just stay put where you are. Where is the development? No one will challenge the other one. If you're only red, there's going to be, loud voices, but who cares? It's just another way to communicate, right? Or yellow, you're going to find funny places. You're going to go downtown and after work's going to be hilarious. But, who was there? I can't remember. No one knows. What was the place? What was the name of the place? No one knows. Only green, who am I to tell you what to do when we're going to stay in the sofa? Blue, they're going to plan the vacation into the year 3000. My recommendation would be, you should have similar personality traits. Sorry about that. You should have similar personality
traits. I'm just thinking of myself doing that. That's what I would do.
You should be somewhat similar, but not identical. But you shouldn't be total opposite either. I think the best way, and I can only speak for I can actually speak for more people. When you have certain traits, let's say you have one of the 4 boxes in common, meaning you're both extroverts, or you're both task-oriented, or you're both relation-oriented, or both introverts. If you can tick one of those ones together, then you have something in common. But if you're on the opposite side of the stream, it's not going to work at all. And I've seen marriages that does work anyways because they have fundamental values and things. But if you're young and you're attracted to a romantic partner and you move into with each other, after, I don't know, 3 weeks, you're gonna mess it up.
Yeah,
you're gonna mess it up. Those relationships rarely lasts. Actually, that's just statistical evidence for that. So, and I would say, any new kind of relationship, if it's at work or in a friendship or when it comes to a partner, go green, meaning shut your mouth, open your ears, just be present, just observe, ask open-ended questions, just see what happens. Let the other person in and learn more about the individual. As the old saying goes, people, I think it was Maya Angelou who said, I think, I might be wrong, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think she said the following, first of all people who said it: people won't always remember what you said, but they will remember how you made them feel.
Yep.
And green people, they're cool, They sit down, they lean backwards, and they say, okay, let's have a conversation. And you are doing all the talking. And when you can talk about you and your life, you're going to feel great. They will let you talk. They will let you speak. Just spit it out and so go green and listen. That's the best way to see who is this character to begin with. Because again, if you do all the talking, you're not going to learn one bit about the other person. Who is this? I don't know. I did all the talking all night. Where does he live? I don't know. What is he doing for a living? Not an idea. No, not a clue. I don't know. Go green. That's the best advice.
The stuff in common, the more I think about it, both, again, sort of my colleague, my best friend, or one of my best friends, and my wife, they are also somewhat red, right? They were both naval officers, career, driven leaders, great leaders. But I think when push comes to shove, they have a great ability to say, your needs are more important than mine. They have that amazing ability that for for me, I don't know that I'm as capable of that. I've tried to be, but it's much more natural for the two of them. And it's something I really respect about them both. So, well, I know we've come up on time here, but thanks so much for spending the time with me here. I know it's going on 9 p.m. plus there, so I appreciate you staying up late for us. And
not a problem at all. It's an interesting conversation. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah,
no problem at all. there's so many things I would like to ask you. Really, maybe we can do it again.
Sure. I mean, well, I've got time. If you want to ask some things, you're more than welcome to. It's I'm on your schedule at this point. But it's up to you.
I have plenty of time. I know I'm free tomorrow. No, I was thinking because you said something. I think the red and green, which is the least common combination. The people that you refer to, your wife and your good friend there.
Yeah.
And could it be? I was wondering because they're officers as well. You said
Yes. Yeah.
right? They're leaders.
Yes.
Do you
for sure.
think this? Because this I can't compare anything, only what I have read and seen, of course. But when it comes to being in the military, not regardless of where you are, obviously, because some missions are more complicated than others, I understand that. But still, it is about to protect and serve, a little bit like a police. We are doing here to contribute to society, to make the world a better place. That's why we do what we do. That's why we take all these risks. That's why we sometimes risk our own lives and everything, because we believe in doing good. That is something that I feel it's not necessarily. This is just a theory. Maybe you can confirm or reject it. It's not necessarily green behavior. It could also be something that I call your drivers, your motivators to do good, because it could be connected to your fundamental values in one way or another. It's the right thing to do. Because the reason I said is because green people usually are struggling with leadership because they have to give orders, they have to push people, they have to sometimes give quite harsh feedback, which is absolutely not a green behavior. So could it be the friendly, helpful side it's the right thing to do, as in what's called a social drive, meaning taking social responsibility, for example, but then they are actually quite red anyway, meaning they are sort of tough, sort of competitive. What do you think? Does it make any sense?
It does. I honestly, you're so much more well versed in this stuff where I don't know if I could make a speculation there, because it's just, I don't probably know the material well enough to say one way or the other. I certainly think it's interesting with my buddy from college. I've just always found him to be one of the most giving people I know. And whether that is
and giving as in generous,
Yeah, just so giving of his time and his energy, and it's never been about him. So some of that sure is value driven, but I think some of it is also just an innate thing with him. It just seems like that's who he is at his core. And my wife, she's, I would say in a lot of ways the same way. But I can see the red stuff in there too at times of having to take charge, and she is the one who's going to step up in certain circumstances for sure. So yeah, I don't know. It's a great question. I think I haven't been around the material long enough to adequately answer it, quite frankly.
Sorry, you just made me curious. So
yeah,
we can leave it at that.
Look, it may be just me. Yeah, and it may be just me misreading people, quite frankly. That could be part of the problem of again, not as well versed in this. And maybe if I dug in deeper, I would go, oh no, you know what? I'm wrong on that. It's actually this. I don't know.
It could also be, what we talked about half an hour ago. Depending on where you come from, you interpret a certain situation a certain way. Maybe someone with a different profile than you would see something else.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's impossible without meeting any of these fascinating characters. So, but it isn't. But people are interesting, and just to wrap it up a little bit, I am very fortunate, very grateful for the job that I have, and I get feedback from literally every continent, including Antarctica. Someone is down there emailing me every quarter with something.
That's awesome.
We have tracked the number, and my IT woman, she said, I'm gonna see who the heck that is. It's kind of some, I don't know what they're doing down there, but
That's amazing.
People are saying if it's feedback from New Zealand or Canada or Montana or Texas or India or Poland, people say the same thing all over the globe. The aha moments are the same. The no moments are the same. The reflections, the questions, it's identical, really, wherever they come from. They have the same approach to this idea, this system, this way of communicating, and I find it so fascinating. The world could be a more beautiful place if we just could, scrap a little bit of the cultural differences away, let's say, because people are. Here's the cliche of the night here: people are not so different as we could imagine.
I know.
Mostly the same everywhere. I mean, literally everywhere. When you get beneath the cultural filter or whatever you want to call it, people are the same and the differences are the same. The system is the same. It is absolutely astonishing when you think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny. Like, I think your material is more needed and more timely probably than ever, given the kind of the current climate out there people more than ever, I think, feel this way. Like, people are idiots. These people, I can't believe they think this kind of thing. And if they would just sort of understand, well, this is why, and this is where they're coming from. I mean, sort of the irony of your title, right? Is like, the reality is you're not surrounded by idiots. You're surrounded by people that just have different ways of looking at things. And like, the more you understand that, the more you actually might be able to communicate with them.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. That is the message. There are a couple of idiots out there, 10 to 12, but they move around a lot, so you run into them constantly. But people are usually not idiots. And remember, Chris, and everyone's listening, we are all the idiots in someone's story.
That's right. Yep.
That is also the case.
That is true. Yeah. Do you have, obviously this was your first book. There's a whole bunch of others in this sort of Surrounded By series. Do you have any more coming out? Is there another Surrounded By book or on the horizon?
Yes, there are 7 titles on the market. There is a revised and expanded edition coming this fall of Surrounded By It, where I will introduce the drivers as well. And I'm working on 5 different books right now. That sounds a lot, but it's going to be a workbook and a business edition, and possibly, maybe we'll see a youth edition. Maybe we'll see. So a lot of things going on. If anyone is interested in this topic, there's a website, surroundedbyit.com. You can check it out and see what's been launched there. I have plenty of stuff going on. The older I get, the more impatient I become. I really realized. I don't think that's a good thing, but I've noticed, time is ticking in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is for all of us. I feel it too. So, well, Thomas, thank you so much for spending the time with me again. It was fascinating stuff. It's great. Surrounded By Idiots. Check it out. It's very useful, I think, for absolutely everybody out there. There's really nobody that can't benefit from it. So thanks for writing it. Thanks for the content. Thanks for your time. And welcome back anytime. You want to continue the conversation, we'll just flip it around. You can ask me questions the whole time next time.
For sure. Give me a call. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for listening to On the X, the official podcast of the Navy SEAL Foundation and an Ironclad original series sponsored by Mechanix Wear. Learn more at NavySEALFoundation.org or text On the X to 60104 to join our subscriber list. See you next time.